All right, so let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Eric Evans. I am a senior cloud security consultant at ScaleSec. I've been in the industry for a while now. I have a background in software development. I consider myself a DevSecOps practitioner, so I like to do a lot of things with code and kind of doing a whole entire process of putting security into pipelines and making it as frictionless as possible. I specialize in cloud security for both Amazon Web Services and Google Cloud Platform. So throughout my presentations, you'll hear me talk about those a lot more than Azure. Unfortunately, I'm not an Azure person, but if you are, and if you want to put your 2 cents in the chat, definitely be sure to do so. I have over a decade of IT experience in general. I've done everything from help desk to network support. Most recently, I've been doing a lot in cloud security. Outside of work, I do sit at the board of directors of the cybersecurity nonprofit, which is putting on our Wednesday webinar today. We're an organization that provides free and accessible security education. In addition to that, I also run the HashiCorp user group, along with a couple of other co-organizers in Atlanta. Definitely check us out. We're doing all of our stuff virtual nowadays, so you can definitely join our meetup and at any time. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about defining your path to a career in cloud security. The topic might seem familiar, especially if you saw the first webinar that I was doing. In this webinar, I hope to kind of recap what we talked about last webinar and then bring it kind of like to the next level, kind of like establishing paths and different ways that you can get a career in cloud security. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with kind of like ramp us back up to a conversation about cloud security. During this whole entire webinar, if you have any questions, be sure to put them in the Q&A. I think it would be great to answer them. And I definitely like this to be a little bit of a conversation as well. So when we talk about cloud security, what are we talking about? So there's many different ways you can slice kind of like, comparing traditional IT security with cloud security. In traditional IT security, basically the security team is like, well, all security, everything from the physical machines to the software that's running on them and beyond is the organization's responsibility. In cloud security, it's a little bit different. It's a shared responsibility. There's something called the shared responsibility model between the organization that's running their workloads on the cloud and the cloud service provider themselves. So that means that cloud service providers like AWS, GCP, and Azure will actually take care of some of your security to a certain point, depending on what service you're using. And then from there, it's up to you to secure the rest of the stack. As far as scalability goes, in traditional IT security, it's slower to scale, mainly because you have to actually bring like servers, equipment, racks, those kind of things. You actually have to plug them up and make sure they're all set. And if you need more capacity, it's a whole entire ordeal to purchase these and install them and then secure them as well. You have appliances that you must buy and secure and put in place as well in order to increase your capacity. Whereas in the cloud, you can do that with a simple API call. It's in many cases just a one-button push to set like a group of virtual machines or a load balancer or a firewall or any kind of things like that. As far as time to market, in traditional IT security, you get a longer time to market because of that lack of agility and scalability that you get in the cloud. This can be to detriment sometimes because cloud does increase things very fast. A lot of things are done through software. A lot of things are done through automated processes, and that needs to be secured. So with cloud security, you get a quicker time to market, which means that the security team needs to be able to react faster. And that's why I love exactly where I am right now in the DevSecOps role, because you get to figure out how to secure things at the speed of DevOps. Resource float utilization, so you get a lower one with traditional IT security. It's harder to kind of like fully utilize resources whenever they're really rigid, so to speak. If you have a server that's memory intensive and you don't use a lot of that memory, well, too bad, you're stuck with that. You kind of have to use it. Whereas in cloud security, you get more an efficient utilization of resources. You can right size virtual machines and so on very easily. You can right size your elastic load balancers, or maybe you have a CDN or whatever it may be, your web application firewalls, all that much more efficiently utilized. Security strategy traditionally has been thought of as like a singular kind of like perimeter-based model. Like, here is the perimeter, this is what I need to secure. That's always been a very traditional approach to security. Whereas in cloud security, it's a lot less of a boundary. There's concepts like zero trust and so on, where there may not be a perimeter, and in that case, the security has to be done beyond just firewall rules and deep packet inspection and things like that. But you're also having to worry a lot about like identity and access management and how to control API calls and those types of things in cloud security. Cost and vendors. So in traditional IT security, you'll hear a lot about vendors. You'll hear about like Cisco. You'll hear about Palo Alto next generation firewalls. You'll hear about CyberArk. You'll hear about all these different kinds of things that are in traditional IT security. Not saying that none of that is in cloud security. There's some of that in cloud security, but for the most part, your cloud service provider can take care of most of your security needs in a cloud native fashion. So you can get GCP firewalls, AWS firewalls, those types of things are native to the platform in the form of like security groups and firewall rules and so on. So obviously we want to learn about how to get started in the cloud security industry. So luckily, getting started in cloud security is a lower barrier to entry than traditional traditional IT security. The reason why is because of a few different things. First of all, you have free to low cost training. You have Microsoft Azure, for instance, who gives out free AZ 900, which is the Azure fundamentals from time to time. There's a link in this slide, and you can see where there would be an event in your area. I think they do it by area. I know sometimes they do it by topic and so on, but you attend the event and you can get a free certification voucher at the end. Oracle Cloud earlier this year allowed for free cloud certifications, but now they haven't been doing that. But you can keep your eyes peeled for any kind of type of free things. Certifications in general with the cloud are pretty inexpensive. You can easily find ones for like less than $100. There's some that's just equal to or not expensive like you would see traditional certifications. Like you'd be hard pressed to find a cloud security certification that would cost like over $500 or anything like that. Whereas in traditional IT security, it's common to see certifications that cost that much. And also you get free access to the actual cloud computing environments. So in a traditional IT stance, you would have to buy servers, you would have to buy load balancers, you would have to buy firewalls in order to actually do security. Whereas in a cloud environment for AWS and GCP, you would be able to simply just sign up for an account. You get access in AWS to over 60 products. You get access to like their VMs, 750 hours a month. I think that's more hours that's an actual month. So you get that within the free tier. The same thing for Google Cloud. Well, a similar thing for Google Cloud Platform. There's an always free tier, and you also get $300 in credit for free to try anything out. So this can be everything from like compute instances to storage. The AI and ML stuff on GCP is very cool. So if you are a security individual who may be interested in like machine learning and AI, definitely check out Google Cloud Platform. I highly recommend it. And with cloud security, it's a hub of all of these different skills. So you're not really lacking in anything by going the cloud security route. You get everything from networking, which I mentioned before, like network load balancers. You have DNS, proxies, subnetting, routing. Hybrid connectivity is another one where you have some of your infrastructure on premise and you might want connectivity to and from the cloud. That comes up a good bit. And content delivery networks, CDNs, for images and text and JavaScript and that kind of stuff. Speaking of JavaScript, software engineering comes into play. So everything in the cloud is kind of moving towards software. Automation scripts, infrastructure is code, right? You could spin up servers just like you would code. But with that, comes its own security responsibilities. How do you secure a server that's defined in this code? What kind of configurations do I need to watch out for to make sure that I have something secure? Luckily enough, automation makes it easier to actually enforce kind of security boundaries and so on. But at the same time, it's a different beast. Also, you get serverless, and I think I've mentioned the cloud security model. So where the cloud service provider will take more of the responsibility, and you would take just a little bit off the top. For serverless, they take care of almost everything except your running application and your data. So that's an important kind of thing that happens in the cloud. And event-oriented architecture. So that would be infrastructure that performs actions in events and in response to other events that are kicked off by other parts of the infrastructure. Security and risk analysis definitely comes into play. You're still doing log analysis. There's a whole entire offering of like CloudWatch logs and Stackdriver logs and firewall logs and VPC flow logs. All those things still occur. So if that's your thing, you'll definitely find it in the cloud. If it's not your thing, luckily enough, the cloud can automate a lot of the pattern detection capabilities, so you don't have to spend a lot of time searching in there. IDS and IPS does come into play. So I think I've mentioned that there are cloud offerings that kind of perform this functionality. So for example, in AWS, there's GuardDuty that kind of acts as a detection system based on the different logs and so on. Yeah, I think we have a question. Somebody has their hand raised. No. All right. And so anyway, then there's security reporting. So that would be, generating reports for compliance purposes, for instance, or maybe doing analysis on different metrics within your environment. All of that is also in there as well. PID testing and vulnerability assessments, they definitely happen in the cloud as well. So as you're putting workloads in the cloud, those are things that do come into play as well, because you have to assess the risk of what you're putting into your environment. This is customer data, so that's definitely something that's still in very high kind of skill as well. There's identity and access management, so things like single sign-on and policy creation and policy evaluation and secrets management. So all these things are also in cloud security. So for instance, you'll need a good single sign-on kind of capability if you're an enterprise, to kind of keep your identity centralized and into the cloud as well. That also comes with its own kind of security controls that need to be put in place.
Hey, Eric, I have one question. Sorry to interrupt you. So you have mentioned IDS and IPS, intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention system. So in AWS, AWS GuardDuty acts as both IDS and IPS, or generally it's a two different systems, right? IDS and IPS. But
yeah,
in
that's
cloud,
a good question. Yeah, so in that particular, GuardDuty is good for detection. You can add prevention capabilities to that. So GuardDuty can kick off what's called a CloudWatch event, and that event can then trigger a serverless function to orchestrate a response to that intrusion. So that response would be that whole entire solution is an IPS, but GuardDuty by itself is an IDS.
All right,
That's
cool. Yeah.
similar to the event-oriented architecture I just mentioned as well. But that's a really good question. You have to do things like that in the cloud a lot. There are appliances that will help you out with that to kind of do it in a traditional type of way. But a cloud native way would be just like using GuardDuty and then CloudWatch events and then a Lambda function.
Yep. Thanks, Eric. Yeah. Gotcha.
Welcome. Good question. Yes. Anytime y'all have a question, please let me know. Cool. So yeah, a lot of system administration as well. So configuring VMs, that's not going to leave anytime soon. You want to make sure there's a good solid baseline for your workloads that are in your environment, and that's going to take a lot of vulnerability kind of scanning of your images and creating a pipeline to get the images in specific ways that you want them to be configured. Caching mechanisms, database, all that kind of comes into play as well. And then cost optimization. So as we said before, the cloud allows for a lot of elasticity, but with that you have to manage it, because you can easily create hundreds of servers, but are you able to pay for it over time? You can turn things off and on, you can right size them and everything. All of that comes part of cloud security in its own respect. Storage and database management. So everything from SQL to NoSQL databases, even more caching mechanisms like Redis and Memcache, object storage, hard drives, those types of things are all still in the cloud, just virtualized. So it helps kind of bring these concepts and make them easily accessible versus traditional IT infrastructure. Okay. All right, great. So let's go ahead and talk about learning cloud security, because obviously before you want to get a career into cloud security, you want to learn more about it and figure out like how things work, so that when you do get to an interview phase, you would be able to talk competently about cloud security. So there's a lot of skills that are involved. There's a lot of technical skills. Even though the soft skills list is shorter in this case, I think the soft skills actually matter a lot more than the technical skills, in my opinion. Technical skills, I mean, obviously networking, open source software. Please embrace open source, because everything in the cloud is, well, I won't say everything, but a lot of stuff in the cloud is open source or is based on open source principles. And just being exposed to open source, either through the use of them while you're pursuing your cloud security career, or by contributing to open source projects, are definitely going to bid you well in the cloud security space. Obviously, cloud infrastructure. So luckily enough, you could sign up for a free tier and kind of work with cloud infrastructure. There's a lot of guides and tutorials online to show you how to do things in the different clouds. We'll get to some of those later on in this presentation. But cloud reasons, doing that in cloud is very important. Did we have a question from somebody?
I was just going to say, I think it's fairly safe to say that cloud infrastructure largely would not even exist without open source software.
Yes, completely agree, 100%. A lot of the things that cloud service providers like AWS and GCP implement are based on open source projects. So yes, it's very safe to say that without open source, you won't have cloud infrastructure. So that's a good one. Linux and all that, all that's open source. Yeah, absolutely. So containers, I think I was talking about. So Docker and Kubernetes and things like that have been very helpful in the cloud, because there's a lot of utilization of your cloud resources, and you want to be able to utilize them effectively. And in order to do that, you want to squeeze as much power out of them as you can. You can do that all through containers. Not saying this is cloud specific. You can definitely do this on premise, and I've seen it done on premise before. It's just that in the cloud, the conversations tend to lean a lot more towards containers than in traditional IT security from what I have experienced. Your mileage may vary though. Always good to note. Applications, I mean, that's not cloud specific either, but it's good to know about them. How do you assess an application for risk? What kind of vulnerability scanners would you use? What kind of pen testing would you use? All of that is interesting stuff to know. There's a question in the chat. Is there a preferred programming language? No, not really. I know JavaScript's becoming pretty ubiquitous these days, but knowing Python for automation is very good. Go has also been a rising player in the DevSecOps space. So I would definitely use those programming languages if you're looking for one to study. What do you use to parse through logs? Oh, so luckily enough for the cloud, there's cloud native solutions for this. So there are, in AWS, there's CloudWatch, which is used for logs. So you go in there and you would be able to filter out logs however you want to filter them. You can create alerts and metrics for those logs. And using event-oriented architecture, similar to what we see for guard duty, you can have these logs. Whenever a pattern of logs occur, you can have an event happen because those logs happened in that particular order because it was a specific log. So look for that. And in Google Cloud, there's Stackdriver, well, formerly known as Stackdriver. Cloud Operations is what the new name is, but you'll hear Stackdriver a lot in the documentation, especially since this was a recent change. So CloudWatch for AWS, CloudTrail as well for AWS, Stackdriver, and Cloud Operations for GCP. Sorry, I don't know much Azure, so there's something there, I'm sure. Another question in the chat: how would you secure CI/CD pipeline from repository to cloud? This seems like a really good topic for another webinar, because that is a really huge question. There's everything from securing your Git repositories with code, doing static analysis on them, doing dynamic analysis on them. Maybe you want to do your infrastructure as code testing as well. That would require spinning up little pieces of infrastructure to do unit testing and contractual testing. And then there's a whole entire pipeline of that artifact that's built once your source code is in the CI phase, in the integration phase. How do you store that artifact? You can store it in something like Artifactory. You can store it in an artifact repository, or if it's a container you're building, you can store that in a container registry. There's Elastic Container Registry for AWS, and there's Container Registry for GCP. So you can simply use those as ways to store your artifact. And then how do you scan that artifact for any kind of vulnerabilities, and how do you ensure it doesn't change over time? How do you do integrity checking? All of that's part of your CD part, right? You have your CI and you have CD. How do you deploy these things? How do you promote them from your test environment to your staging environment to your production environment, and do it in a safe manner? And then what happens if a vulnerability is found in the middle? And there's different strategies to handle all of that. But that's a really good question, Paul. And I wish I could answer it fully for you, but really there is a lot to that question. I think I might do a future webinar on that, but good question. Good question. All right. So yes, I think we talked about software development. DevOps pretty much is exactly what I just mentioned there. Access management. So the cloud, I think I've said before, is heavy in IAM, identity and access management. In order to do stuff in the cloud, you have to have access to it in a programmatic way. And all of that is achieved through knowing how to do access management. How do you associate permissions to an identity? And how do you associate an identity to a role? And is a role, which is a collection of permissions, how does that done with a machine user versus a human user? These are all really big questions in the cloud that I, again, can do future webinars on, but they're important things to get down technically and be able to talk about, at least at a high level. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of talks on DevSecOps, but details and implementation, the devil is always in the details. So that will definitely always be the case. And then compliance and frameworks. There's room in the cloud for those. I put this as their technical skills, but really it's not really a technical skill. It can be in its own respect. I don't want to get into that, but being informed of, like things like ISO 27000, PCI, payment card industry kind of thing, CIS benchmarks. If you're working in the healthcare industry, HIPAA compliance. There's financial regulations. If you're working in the government, there's things like FedRAMP that you have to worry about. So, so there's plenty of room there for those who don't want to get their hands dirty with code, for those who don't want to get their hands dirty with, clicking around in the console or anything like that. But rather look at the cloud from a different perspective, a compliance perspective or a risk perspective. There's definitely, or a governance perspective. Now, the soft skills are the ones that, unfortunately, I won't be able to teach you at all. Those are things that you definitely develop over time. Is done through either just networking, socializing, mock interviews, public speaking, and these, or just playing around in the console and learning more about the cloud. It comes down to curiosity, listening skills, communication, attention to detail. These are all very important skills to kind of grow over time. And I can't tell you enough, like, cloud security misconfigurations happen a lot because of a lack of communication. It's a lot of times lack of communication between the security teams and the development teams. Like those folks who are building things in the cloud and everything, I'm sure they don't want things to like be hacked. They don't want things to go haywire. They want to know how to do it right, but they know if they talk to the security team's going to put all these roadblocks in the way. Well, being able to communicate and develop solutions that don't cause that friction is key in order to achieve good cloud security. And you do that through the use of what we've been talking about, like CI/CD pipelines and DevSecOps, and where you have different scanning that happens within their development lifecycle. And before code is merged into the code base, it has a baseline kind of like scan that's detected in there. Sure, it might take a few more minutes for your code to be merged in, but that few minutes means that it's been checked for basic vulnerabilities, basic security, and then you do continuous compliance after that. After it's deployed, ensure that the workload is still secure, ensure that the that everything that's mandated by your compliance team is checked. So all of those are very important as well. Right. And then there's a lot of different products out there, of course, to kind of be familiar with. We've been talking about AWS and GCP, and there's Azure, of course. But there's also a lot of things with like cloud automation that are coming up as well. And a couple that I explore a lot within this presentation are HashiCorp Vault and HashiCorp Terraform. One is used for secrets management and kind of like encryption as a service, and the other one is used to deploy your infrastructure. Those are two kind of key components to cloud security. It's like securely developing your infrastructure, safeguarding your data. Those are just extremely important concepts, and these are two common open source tools that would be good for you to be familiar with. Serverless, obviously, like that's everywhere, but the serverless framework itself is very useful in deploying like serverless functions and so on. Container and service mesh, so Kubernetes and Docker. Unfortunately, I won't teach you, all these technologies today, but things to think about, right? Like to Google maybe later on, or while you're in your cloud security journey, kind of look through these and think about how they would fit into a cloud security strategy. Istio is another one. It's used for like service mesh and directing your traffic within your containers, because you have your load balancers and you have your proxies and things like that directs traffic into your virtual machines and so on. But what about the routing within your containers? The containers are little parts of little microservices that run within your virtual machines. There's a lot of routing going on there. Pods, essentially, yes. In Kubernetes terms, they're called pods, which is it could be a group of containers, can make a specific pod, but a pod is treated as one single unit in Kubernetes, and then Istio can use to route from pod to pod in different ways. So something interesting to know about. HashiCorp Console is another one which does something similar to Istio that I just mentioned there to oversimplify what it does, and more, right? So a lot of open source tools. I just mentioned a few to kind of get the gears turning, but these kind of things, as you research and look for them, as ways to the talking points in your interview and stuff, be like, oh yeah, I've heard of Istio. Doesn't it do routing between pods? That automatically makes you sound like, wow, this guy knows Istio. He's probably, or she is probably good at like, getting a cloud security career. So, let's talk a little bit about certifications, because I think, I always mention like the hands-on learning and stuff, but it's also important to demonstrate your knowledge to folks who don't know who you are or what you've done. And there's many ways to do this. Certifications is one way. Later on in this presentation, I'm going to show you that certification is definitely not the only way. But when it comes to certifications, it's definitely the journey that is more important than the end, in my opinion. Sure, getting a piece of paper and saying that I have completed a certification is definitely an accomplishment in itself, and is definitely something that folks look for, and will definitely, well, not definitely, but most likely get your application more noted than someone who doesn't have a certification. But the knowledge that you acquire in the process is what you're actually going to be using in the field, and is important to retain, through the use of like, oh, hey, I've learned this in my certification class. Maybe I want to apply this to my cloud security environment. Let me spin up an infrastructure with my $300 in credits and actually try it out. So certifications definitely demonstrate your knowledge, and it doesn't necessarily equal getting a job. Just because you get a certification doesn't mean you're going to ace the interview. Being able to talk a little bit more about cloud security can definitely help you get to that point, right? But it will definitely, it won't hurt to have a certification for sure. I have plenty, so I can tell you, I love getting them. I think they're great. Definitely, it's something that should be used to eventually gain experience, right? If you have certifications and you have the experience, then that's the win right there. You're saying that not only have I demonstrated knowledge through like a standardized test and through either my cloud service provider or cloud agnostic certification, but I also have shown through experience that I know how to get this to work. So those are exactly what I mean by use certifications to eventually gain experience. And pursuing certifications, not necessarily acquiring them, is where you learn, and that learning process is definitely invaluable whenever getting to this. So I've mentioned cloud agnostic, general certs, or vendor specific. Now, for every other security field, I've said, get the agnostic ones, get the ones that are not tied to a specific vendor. How useful is a Cisco certification? Well, other than like a CCNA or whatever, but like a very hyper focused one, or like a like a Fortinet or a Juniper Networks or an F5 certification. It's as good as that specific appliance is, or that family of appliances are, right? In the cloud, if you get an AWS certification, a lot of the skills actually transfer very well to GCP. Amazon S3 is comparable to Google Cloud Storage. Amazon EC2 is comparable to Google Cloud Virtual Machines. And same thing with Azure, right? Azure Storage Blobs, right? Yeah, I know a little bit of Azure, not too much. But basically what you have there is, my advice there would be to go ahead and get certified with a major public cloud. Don't go for the cloud agnostic ones. The cloud agnostic ones are a little more expensive. They have a lot more jargon that, in my personal experience, haven't heard in the field more than I've heard of the vendor specific things. And that's why, the reason why is probably because every time I'm working within cloud security, I'm always working within a specific cloud security provider. So AWS is the big one. They have over half the market. I don't remember exactly the number that they have. But if you have a certification in AWS, then the chances are the employer that you're looking at will have a presence there and be able to talk to you about that. So same thing for GCP or Azure, right? What would I recommend out of those three? Probably AWS, just because more people have like AWS presence. But it really doesn't hurt to get a GCP or Azure certification or certifications. Good question. What about QuickLab to Coursera? What's my thought? So QuickLab is actually later on in my presentation. I highly recommend them. Coursera, I also highly recommend. So yes, both of them are good, and they're really good combinations, especially for like, I know a lot of my Google Cloud certifications are Coursera and QuickLabs. I just took the machine learning beta one, and I did it using the Coursera courses and QuickLabs for hands-on experience. But we'll get to that here in a minute. But I definitely think those are two different, two good ones. But yeah, getting a certification kind of helps you stand out to employers who use that particular cloud. So if you have your Azure certification, it's an Azure shop, they're going to be like, oh, this guy knows Azure. And then I'm not saying the cloud agnostic ones are not worth getting. They're definitely good for like foundations. They're definitely good for broadening your skill set. Do I typically recommend them for foundations? No, but I know they're good for foundations because it gives you a overall like look at, here's the whole entire space of cloud. You get to learn all the different ways cloud can be in the different forms it can manifest in. But I think it's really more useful for like broadening your skill set. Like once you get into like one cloud, right? Like let's say you start racking up your AWS certifications, because they kind of build on top of each other. Because if you get your cloud practitioner, that builds you up to like a solutions architect associate, and that can build you up to like a solutions architect professional. You know, so they build on top of each other. And I'd say if you get to one, you're about like halfway through the other, and you're halfway through the next one. So use the cloud agnostic one to kind of broaden your skill set there. It doesn't hurt to have like a Cloud Plus or a CCSP, for instance, called Certified Cloud Security Professional. There you go. So let's look at some different learning paths through the lens of like certifications, and maybe this will kind of help solidify what we have. So for this one, we have a certification path that is based on like software, right? So as I say, go ahead and study the basics first, right? You'll be able to learn basic like terminal skills online for free. So you could just Google how to use a terminal and bring it up and practice with it. You can then get some hands-on experience with the cloud by signing up for an AWS or GCP or Azure cloud account. And then pick a certification to study, right? So in this case, if you're, have a software background, I would recommend either getting the HashiCorp Terraform or the HashiCorp Vault one. The reason why are, one, these technologies work on all three clouds, or well, all three. There's many different clouds, but all three major public clouds plus some extra clouds and extra things that are beyond cloud. I highly recommend just using the study guide, and then kind of going from there to the certification exams. The official HashiCorp study guides are the best resource in that case. So that's what I always recommend for them. And then in the pursuing of these certifications, you get experience in infrastructure and security automation, orchestration, DevSecOps for the Terraform one, and then for the HashiCorp Vault one, you get to learn a lot about protection of sensitive data, especially like secrets and credentials and access keys that gives you access to other secrets within Vault as well. Encryption as a service and encrypting different things are also explored in the certificate. And I put both as DevSecOps because you can use them to secure your pipelines in many ways. Terraform, for instance, goes very well with HashiCorp Sentinel, which is used for policy as code. Knowing how policy as code works is going to be very beneficial in a cloud security career. Just being able to talk about policy as code during a technical interview makes it seem like you know a lot about cloud. Same thing for Vault. You know, if you know about secrets management, that is a topic that constantly comes up, and that's something that Vault will give you as well. Here's one for DevOps. So there's another question in the chat. Is there a learning path based on security, like a background is system admin and vulnerability management? I think everyone has their own learning path, and I don't think any person here would actually do these exactly the way that I have them laid out here. I think it'll be best to kind of take these piece by piece, right? And say, if my background is system administration, can that be related to like DevOps? And if so, which one of these ways can I kind of do them? And kind of look at each one of these certifications that are essentially the end, right? So you have like some associate certifications down in the lower right-hand screen that eventually leads to your DevOps professional. But definitely research these certifications and see what the requirements are for them. Maybe while you're actually doing your exam readiness course, which these are free, by the way, all these are free. I didn't put anything in here that costs money, right? As I've said before, cloud security is nice because it's free and you can actually have your hands-on experience to do it. Look at them and see which ones would be easiest. There's actually a SysOps associate right here. So if you're a system administration background, I think SysOps associate would be a good one to kind of start and then eventually get to like a DevOps professional. So that would be what I'd recommend for the person who just mentioned that in the chat. So here in this learning path, like from a DevOps perspective, you know, you can always go for the HashiCorp certification, just like I mentioned in the last slide. But going through like for an AWS certification, doing either the SysOps if you're more from a system administration background, or from a developer if you're more from like a developer background. You can approach it either way. And then once you get your associate, you can go for the other associate as well. Actually, I did that just to make sure that, you know, I'm ready for my professional. It's an optional kind of thing. But I think once you pass one of these associates, you can definitely work towards the DevOps professional. So that's what I'd recommend there. And then obviously you can not use AWS, you can go Google Cloud as well. Google Cloud has a different path because it doesn't have the SysOps path. Instead, it has what's called the Associate Cloud Engineer, which kind of gives you some of the introductions to things like IAM and security automation, kind of building blocks. There's a lot in here about how to implement things in Google Cloud using the SDK or the Google Cloud command line. So knowing how these work will help you out in the other certifications, which would be either the professional DevOps engineer or the professional security engineer. And obviously, if you're, you know, more like, if you want to be more DevOps focused, you can definitely get the DevOps engineer. I think you'll learn a lot about security that way. But obviously, it would be good to have a certification that has security in its name. So Google Cloud Professional Security Engineer would probably be appealing to a lot of folks here. You also get a wide breadth of security stuff from that. Everything from IAM to network security to data protection and operations and compliance, all covered on that exam. And I've taken it before. You know, feel free to reach out for me for any questions as far as these certifications go. And here's from a systems architect perspective. So it's a different way of looking at it. Notice I removed like the Terraform and the Vault stuff, because when you're looking at things from a higher level, like an architectural type of level, there's no need to, well, I mean, I wouldn't say there's no need, but it's a lot of times easier to approach things from like an architect perspective. And so this is when I recommend looking at things like the AWS Solutions Architect Associate, and then eventually getting to like the AWS Security Specialty, because I think looking at things from a higher level makes it easier to kind of go through. And I think there's a little typo in this, but the exam readiness for the specialty, there's actually one for the security specialty there, so that's what that should be. But there's not a huge jump from a Solutions Architect Associate to an AWS Security Specialty. You add on a lot about data protection and IAM in order to get there. The rest of the stuff is kind of covered on the solutions architect. For GCP solutions architect, this one, you'd probably spend a lot of time here in the exam guide before you achieve the solutions architect professional. You're kind of, instead of doing, Google Cloud only has one associate exam, but instead of doing an associate exam before you do, there's a lot that goes into that before attempting a certification. There is a list of resources that I recommend from the learning path slide. I want to definitely make sure that this presentation is available to everyone who's attended today. So definitely hang tight for that. But I'll make sure that that's definitely here. But it would be good to walk through those if we had time. I don't think we have the whole time to go through every single one. And then, yeah, of course, security engineer, another one is you could go through this path as well from a systems architect's perspective. Then there's other certifications, right? CompTIA Cloud Plus is known, CompTIA is known for Security Plus and things like that as well. Certificate of Cloud Security Knowledge, CCSK. CISSP is good. That one's definitely, that would go into one of the more general security certifications. So yes, CISSP would be another good one. A CCSP, though, is different. That is the cloud security, certified cloud security professional. So it might look a little bit like CISSP, but it's actually CCSP. So I would recommend that one as well if you're looking for some agnostic certifications. And then staying on top of trends, right? Give myself a little plug. I write a lot in the ScaleSec blog, so definitely check us out. I think we write a lot about AWS and GCP stuff and think about it in different ways than others do. There's also obviously some other sources like the Cloud Security Alliance, which has their own blog. Cloud Academy is another one that has their own blog as well. Keeping up the trends with Google Cloud through their blog and through their security white papers and resources are really important. I think if you're transitioning from like traditional IT security to cloud security, these white papers are a very good resource because they kind of tell you how different things are built in the cloud and what they thought about when building it and what are the recommended ways of configuring it in the cloud from a general perspective. So I think these white papers and resources that they have are really good. Same thing for the AWS white papers and guides. Very well written stuff, almost academic as far as their writings go. And it deep dives into the security aspects of the cloud. Really good resources and definitely the blogs to keep up to date with what you have. And there's a couple of others I put here, Rick's Cloud and Securosis. Those are a couple of blogs that I follow that also have some really good security knowledge. And knowing about these sources and being able to talk about them during job interviews and stuff like that shows that you have an interest in cloud security and you know how to keep up to date with cloud security. And not only that, but a common interview question is to ask about what is your most favorite announcement from Google Cloud or AWS or whatever it may be. And if you follow these blogs, you could be like, oh yeah, I really like this one thing that was just announced or whatever it may be. All right, let's talk a little more about hands-on cloud security. So in addition to what we've already mentioned about like certifications and learning and stuff like that, it's important to talk to people. We're people, we are social creatures, right? So it's important to talk to folks about similar topics, like talk about cloud security, join a GCP, AWS, Azure meetup. Those are always good. Join CSMP. We have topics on cloud security all the time. There's definitely different things like contributing to open source that you can do as well. So there's an R&D division that I head over here at CSMP where we work on open source projects. There's GitHub where there's plenty of open source projects, including a lot of the ones that were mentioned before, like Kubernetes and Istio and HashiCorp Vault and HashiCorp Terraform. Those are really big projects, to get involved on. Depending on if you know one of the programming languages, I think a lot of them are programmed in Go nowadays. To get involved with an open source project and security aspects of it, it's definitely a good feather in your cap, especially if you get something merged in and it shows up on your GitHub, which I'll show later. How you can use your GitHub as like as a portfolio to sell yourself, as far as like getting a career in cloud security. And then there's experimentation, right? As far as cloud things go. So Quick Labs was already mentioned in the chat. I think this one's a pretty good one. Linux Academy, a Cloud Guru, those are good as well. And they have different guided labs that you can take. Cloud Labs, I haven't tried this one yet, but I've been recommended that one. It's been another way too. Yeah, so there's a lot there. All right, and talk a little bit more about jobs in cloud security. So here's some examples of cloud security jobs. DevSecOps engineer, right? Sometimes they're just called DevOps engineers, and they are expected to do security. Believe me, that happens all the time. Cloud security architect, folks looking from cloud security from more of like an architectural standpoint rather than in the weeds. Cloud security engineer, who are more in the weeds rather than a architect or standpoint. Cloud security consultant, those who are more of like going from projects to projects, engagements, we like to call them. Compliance consultant, those who consult on maybe looking at different frameworks or different just compliance standards and so on in the context of a cloud environment. Technical project managers should have some knowledge about cloud and definitely cloud security. Cloud security analyst, who's looking at those blogs, who's creating that those detections and so on. So there's good opportunities here for cloud jobs. And this is the part where I was talking about like building your portfolio, right? So it's important to demonstrate to your employers what you can do and so on. So on a GitHub account, for instance, you can and I clicked on here. Here's my GitHub account, for instance. Yeah, you can see like these different projects that you're involved in, different organizations you're involved in, different things like that you have as well. And when you put this on your resume, it looks really good to employers, what you can do, right? So skipping ahead for some reason. Yeah, and definitely keep your LinkedIn up to date, right? Put any projects that you've done on your LinkedIn and put all your certifications on there that you've been acquiring. Put the trainings that you've done. A lot of the free trainings come with free certifications. If you were in my first webinar, you'd remember that. Just get those certifications, trainings, all that, put that on your LinkedIn, demonstrate that you've done things with cloud, and folks will definitely appreciate that. If you have the aptitude, create your a website, with your highlighting your abilities and stuff. References are very important too. Mentors, join a mentorship program. I know here at CSMP we're working on one. If you're interested, let me know. Colleagues, who are you working with now? If you're not working with anyone now, these could be students, fellow students. If you're not a student or anything, these could be friends and family. The folks who can attest to your abilities as a human being. Those are always good references. Teachers, professors. I definitely say, yeah, if you're a student, especially, like tapping into them are really good. Supervisors and things. So having those references, building your portfolio are really good. But sometimes you really need to actually get into a job-like atmosphere or a job to actually put on your resume, put something right there, right? So working for nonprofit organizations shows you take initiative, care about the community, look good on a resume, really it does. These are volunteer positions a lot of the time. Do it pro bono, temporarily. Don't do it forever, right? Like don't hurt yourself. But doing it for a while and volunteering on the side definitely helps beef up a resume. All right, let's go ahead and get on to our conclusion. So there are many paths to cloud security. There's not one path for everybody in cloud security. There's not one path for every system administrator or vulnerability management person or software developer or anything like that. There's different paths you can go. I've showed some examples today to kind of get your feet wet, but definitely make your own path and go out there and do what's best for you. That's always very important. There's a lot of free and low-cost learning materials and study guides to show off your knowledge. And when I say show off your knowledge, put it on your GitHub, put it on your LinkedIn, link that onto your resume. Show people that you've done things, and they will respect that. Do cloud security projects for free. Use the free tiers of the clouds to their fullest extent. They're free. I mean, you can't do better than free. Maybe if they pay you to do it, but still, I mean, doing those cloud security projects for free are very rewarding. There's lots of cloud open source opportunities to learn and get involved. And you can do this through volunteering. Some suggestions where to start volunteering. I know us at the cybersecurity nonprofit need some help volunteering, so definitely volunteer for us. There are other organizations too. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but just look for some nonprofits and see, if they have a cloud presence, a cloud security presence, and if so, apply and do that. But that's what I would suggest as far as like starting to volunteer. Cloud security intersects with many other technology fields. Cloud means more software-based solution. Automation means you do it right. There's definitely lots of need for cloud security practitioners in many types of companies that will continue to grow. And there's many opportunities to make a difference for privacy and security, especially through those volunteer opportunities and just keeping people's data safe. All right, that's it. Now open to Q&A, and thank you very much, everybody. All right, let's see what's in the Q&A section here that we have so far. So we have, I got membership for TryHackMe to understand some of these technical skills as I'm not from an IT background. Even though the simplest of the tasks were not easy for me, like learning SQL injection, that's definitely not an easy task. I mean, you can copy and paste all day long, but doing it by hand is hard, which I have no idea. Same for Python. Should I start from network or security plus CompTIA? I think the network plus is typically better to pursue before the security plus, or so that's what I remember CompTIA recommending. Having a good fundamentals in networking definitely will help you through a security certification. All right, next question is, so the function, the code 42 software, if you're familiar, provides in detection, would fall under identity and access management or security risk analyst. I would say that detection capability would definitely be in my security and risk analysis more than identity and access management. It's more of detecting like a known bad thing and hopefully stopping it before it occurs. Okay, and then another one from Michael Cash. I've graduated college and looking to get into cloud sec eventually. What jobs would lead to those without any history in DevOps or security? So there's different things like you can do. You can even start like at help desk. That's where I started. Go to help desk first, then find like a path either through like software or maybe even DevOps or any of those. Even compliance, right? Starting off with like a compliance-based job would be useful. Internships a lot help a lot as well. Co-ops and things like that. So I would highly recommend those for you. And again, take advice. Take my advice on the put stuff on your GitHub, put stuff on your LinkedIn, advertise yourself, and get those references and so on. Those are going to help you out if you don't have any job history in DevOps and security, and volunteer. Those will definitely help boost your resume with just a little bit of effort. Got another one. I am working towards my AWS Cloud Practitioner, but heard on one of the online events that the AWS Cloud Architect Associate has more weight on the resume. Do you agree? Is AWS Practitioner not worth going for? I agree. Very unpopular opinion sometimes, but the reason why is I feel like a lot of the things on the Cloud Architect Associate can definitely be grasped without the practitioner. So I would definitely say start studying for the Cloud Architect Associate, and before you do a certification, always do the official certification practice tests. The practice tests will give you a good gauge as to like where you are, and if you're passing like above 70% on them, I'd say go for the certification. If you're passing below that, figure out where your knowledge gaps are, and kind of like work on those. And then if you're really bombing them, if you're really failing them, go ahead and do the Cloud Practitioner first. But I'd say go for the associate first, and then try that out. And if it doesn't work out for you, just do the Cloud Practitioner. Another question: what can you expect for salaries? Ooh, good question. It definitely varies, and it depends on where you live, and it depends on what kind of industry you're in. It's hard to speculate as far as like what salaries go. It definitely depends. I would say do some research on like Glassdoor, PayScale. Those probably have some better numbers than the numbers that I can throw out right now. But it's not a bad question. It really is a good question. It's just not one that I feel qualified to answer at this point. Got another one. Thank you, Eric. As a tech writer, what do you think your skills might apply in the cloud security environment? Oh, well, thank you for the thank you. You're very welcome. As a tech writer, some skills that definitely apply in the cloud security environment. So I'm beginning to consider myself a tech writer too, right? I like to do blogs and stuff like that. So those types of skills like writing reports and things like that are really good in consulting, for instance, because a lot of times folks will want us to come in and figure out what is going on with their environment and then give them a report. And in that report, it could be, dozens of pages of long of what's going on in your cloud security environment. And that writing skill is going to be very important. So as a tech writer, I think compliance, you'll definitely have some good things going on there. Consulting, definitely some good things going on there. Even underrated, right? Engineering, right? As technical as that may be, a lot of engineers don't document enough, and that leads to tribal knowledge, which eventually leads to cloud security mishaps, misconfigurations, lack of continuity whenever folks leave. So as a tech writer, I think those skills apply in those areas. So I would definitely do that. Here's another one. Is learning basic Linux commands recommended? Yes, learning basic Linux commands is definitely recommended. The reason why is because your virtual machines, your other services that you may be running in, like App Engine, for instance, which is like a managed service by Google, which is like giving you some compute resource to run simple applications, sometimes require you to remotely access those resources and administrate them. So just having those basic commands is going to help. Sometimes they show up on certification exams, like the HashiCorp ones, for instance. And for the, especially for like the Google Cloud Associate Engineer, I remember getting a lot of Linux commands. So yes, I would say learning basic Linux commands is recommended and will help you out a good bit. Are there any websites you recommend for finding career and or volunteer opportunities? I wish I did some more research on this, but you can check out csmp.org/volunteer for the volunteers that we have. We have plenty of volunteer positions open. LinkedIn in general is good for career opportunities. I see a lot of career opportunities there. Join our Slack. We have a jobs channel. That's definitely good too. And then I see port 80 open in a lot of firewalls. This port needs to be open if a web server is behind it, correct? Typically, yes, but not always would be the fast answer to that. And then I do some scripting for my work and would like to add to my GitHub to show my work, but I'm concerned it seems like leaking security risk. I keep obvious things out like internal leaks. How do you approach that? Just be very careful with what you're committing and ensure there's nothing sensitive or secret in there. That's what I'd recommend. The last thing you want is an employer to look at an access key that you've committed. Do you suggest CompTIA COIS A+ specialty cert to land a cloud security engineer? Yes, I do consider that path a good path. So if that's what you're looking at, go for it. I think that's a good way to do it. All right, cool. I think I've went through all the Q&A. I know we went over, but thank you, everybody. I think that's going to be the end for today. And I highly appreciate everybody joining today. We will be providing the recording link and all the other links and all that. So thank you very much, everybody. It's been very enjoyable. I really enjoy hanging out with everybody.